Well, welcome back, folks. In this episode of the work on the little Ford 8N tractor, I thought we'd do a little review of where I started, where we've been, and where I anticipate going with this project over the coming few months before I put the project back in service. But before I get to that, you may have noticed I've got a new pair of glasses. These are new prescription safety glasses that I've had now a couple of weeks. The reason I went with new glasses is back when I was working on the valve job, or completing the valve job on this tractor, I got a little piece of metal, a very fine piece of shavings in my right eye, in the white part of the eye. Had to go to Intermed and have it removed. It was very uncomfortable. And even though my previous glasses, which were several prescriptions old now, I've worn them for years in the shop with a pair of safety glasses that goes over the top. Even though I had both those pair of glasses on, somehow or other I got that little piece of shavings in my eye, and I thought, well, that'd be a good time just to go ahead and update my glasses. So that's what these are. And in fact, I can see a lot better with these than I could the old glasses. But anyway, moving along, what I want to talk about is first is where I started with this project. And for those of you who've been with me for a while, this might be redundant, but for those of you that are newer, this is early spring 2025. I bought the tractor, the 8N, in fall of 24, almost 6 months ago now. And it was owned by my neighbor. It hadn't been running 10 or 12 years. Clearly had led a hard life. I think it spent a lot of its life outside in the elements, stored and left outside. I could just tell by the paint and the patina on the machine. Though when I got it, it did run. My neighbor got it running. It actually belonged to his father, who used it in gardening work. And when I got it, it had the wheels set way out, which is one of the first things I did. Is I brought the wheels into the stock or normal tread width because I didn't need a wide wheel set for the type of work I'm going to be using the tractor for, which is brush cutting. So I brought the wheels in. And in so doing, one of the very first things I had to do to the tractor is replace the left rear wheel, because in the process of rotating the wheels around, I snapped off the valve stem, and of course the tires were loaded, and I had calcium solution all over the driveway. So I had to I just replaced the tire because it was dry rotted and had significant cracks and splits in it. And I put a new tire and a new tube on it, and so that was the very first thing I had to do, was put a new tire on the rear. The other tire on the right side of the tractor is serviceable, not great, but it'll be okay for my purposes at this point. Some of the other things I did, or what I've done to date rather, is we have rebuilt the 3-point hydraulic system, which didn't work at all when I got the tractor, you might recall, so I ended up dropping the pump out of the bottom of the unit and doing a complete rebuild, painting it, putting it back in, and now the 3-point does work. We did a complete engine valve job, that is cut new valve seats, all new hardware valves, springs, retainers, valve guides, cleaned up the entire inside of the engine, that is the piston crowns, the cylinder head, painted the cylinder head, and of course adjusted the valves and I put it back together, so I did a complete valve job. I also overhauled the engine governor and opened it all up, re-shimmed it, replaced the ball bearings. There's 3 little balls in there that float out and regulate the speed of the engine. So I rebuilt or overhauled the governor, painted the case, put that back on. It had a significant leak, so obviously new gaskets and seals and the whole 9 yards. Also rewired the entire tractor. All the old wiring came out complete. All new OEM equivalent, that is restoration quality. The fabric wrap loom was replaced. Spark plug wires and ignition switch. the last major thing I've done is rebuilt the carburetor, pulled it apart, cleaned it thoroughly. That was the last few videos that we've done. Repainted it, put it back on, and now of course the engine is running. So when we talk about what's next for the tractor, I'm breaking it down into must-dos. That is things that I believe I must do before I can put it into service. And again, that's really brush cutting with a pull-behind brush cutter, rotary cutter. And then things that would be nice to do, but I may or may not get to those this year. We'll see how time goes. But the must-dos at this point is adjust the carb needles. Now, I have adjusted the idle, so the tractor does idle correctly. I've got it down to around 850 to 900 RPMs. It's supposed to idle around 400. There's no way I'm going to get this engine to idle at 400 plus RPM. Maybe when it was brand new, it would idle at that speed, but not anymore. It's just too loose. I can get it down to 900, 850, 900, and I'm fine with that right now. But the idle is adjusted, but the low and high speed or the power jet needs to be adjusted yet. I have not done that. I need to warm up the engine really well, probably run around the yard a little bit before I can set the idle, or rather the needles. Next thing I'm going to do is install anti-sway bars or sway bars for the 3-point hitch. I already have the kit. I haven't installed it yet, and we'll talk about that more in another video. I'm not going to get into detail on the sway bars in this video. I need to add an overrun clutch to the 3-point power takeoff unit. That is to prevent the PTO shaft from driving the tractor when the clutch is pushed in. And again, we'll talk about that in more detail in another video, but that's really a safety feature that I have to add. I was told by the previous owner of this tractor had an overrun clutch at one time. He doesn't know what happened to it. He couldn't find it, so I just bought a new one. I also need to add a 3-point top link because I am going to be using a brush cutter, so I need to use a 3-point. This tractor did not come with one. I've already bought it, and we'll talk about that also more in another video. And then the remaining item, and this is really a big one, is I need to put the hood back on, which has the fuel tank. The fuel tank mounts to the bottom of the hood. I've got a temporary fuel tank rigged up, as you probably have seen if you've been with me for a while. That one, it's just a quart or a liter, and that's certainly not big enough to use, for use of the tractor while I'm brush cutting. So eventually I do have to put the hood back on with the fuel tank, and I have a new fuel line I'm going to put on also at that point to allow me to actually use the tractor. So those items are the ones that I must do before I can put the tractor back in service. Now let's talk about the things that maybe I can get done. I would like to get some of these done. I don't think I'll get them all done, but we'll see. So let's go through that list. The first is repainting the seat pan. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you might recall that I bought a replacement seat because the seat pan that was on the tractor was not original to this machine. It came off, I think, a later model Ford. And I found a very nice used 8N seat. And though the surface finish was pretty much gone, I did clean it up and primed it. It's on a tractor right now, but I would like to paint that. And I would use, of course, the New Holland paint that I already have. In order to do that, I will have to get the appropriate thinner and hardener for this paint. I haven't picked that up yet. I will also be painting the inlet tube that goes from the canister of the air cleaner element down to the carburetor intake. While I'm doing the painting, I thought I'd just do that at the same time, which today is one side is red, one side is blue. I will probably use an HVLP gun. I have both a HVLP as well as a regular siphon feed system, paint systems, because I've done a lot of painting in motorcycles, so I've pretty much got all the gear to paint. I don't paint inside, I have to paint outside, but nonetheless, I have to get the thinners and the hardener for this paint and decide which version of the paint system I'm going to use, HVLP or siphon feed. Next is, another item is flushing the cooling system, replacing the radiator hoses, and adding a thermostat. This tractor, again, does not have a thermostat. Someone in their infinite wisdom took it out, who knows when. I do have a new thermostat. I do not have the final solution for the radiator, and I do have to pick up the new radiator hoses yet. I can have those in a few days or so. I have to wait for nice weather for almost all these items, by the way, that I'm talking about now. I have to wait for nice weather so I can go outside. So whether I'm painting or flushing the cooling system, I have to have nice weather to do that. So I have to wait till we get some nice warm days. So the cooling system work needs to be done. I would like to probably replace the points and condenser while I have the radiator out to flush it or replace it. Because this is a front mount distributor rather. It's a front mount distributor. It's an early 50. And it's much easier to get at the points condenser with the radiator out and the hood off. So that's probably on the list here. Again, the tractor runs pretty well right now, so it's not a paramount importance, but while I've got the radiator out, that would be a good time, I think, to replace the points condenser. I would like to test the engine compression now that I've got the valve job done. Again, you might recall I did compression check last fall. It was a little light on a couple cylinders. That's why I did the compression, or rather the valve work. And I would like to just, for grins and giggles, test it again to see where it's at today. Of course, the engine should be up to operating temperature and nice and warm. Again, I'll probably do that outside. I would like to tidy up that conduit, that wiring conduit, and those standoffs. The one twisted a little bit when I torqued the head bolts back down earlier, and I'd like to straighten that back, because if I'm going to be in the cooling system anyway, I've got to drain the coolant down. That'd be a good time to replace or repair that twisted standoff. Replace those two bolts with studs so that I don't end up doing this or repeating that twisting of that standoff again. If this doesn't make sense to you, you might want to go back and watch one of the videos on the wiring where I talked about that in a bit more detail. And then touch up some of the nuts and bolts and parts that have been, the paint that I've been replacing, or repainting rather, as I've been going, has chipped. Do some touch up as we go along. And then certainly I would like to eventually test the generator output to see if the generator is in fact generating, and verify whether the ammeter is working or not. Now right now the ammeter doesn't really show anything, but I don't know if that's because the generator isn't generating or the ammeter isn't working, or both. But eventually there is a protocol for testing that in the service manual, and it's not a big deal to me right now because I can charge the battery in between operating sessions, but eventually I would like to get that straightened out, or decide what's going on there, and if I have to do repairs, eventually I can do that. And certainly I need to probably go around and lubricate all the fittings. There's a number of grease fittings, Zerk fittings on this tractor. Probably should do that before I put it into service, actually, and I probably will, but it's not probably of paramount importance right now. That I get it done in the near term, but eventually I should get around to that as well. So this last grouping is things that I would like to do, but don't necessarily have to do as we go forward. So some of these things are going to be included in some upcoming videos that we're going to be talking about in more detail, such as the three-point arm sway bars, lift arm sway bars, the overrun clutch, and the cooling system and the radiator solution that I'm coming up with or working on. We'll get into more detail on those in other videos coming up in the future. For now, this is going to be it for this video today, folks. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.